Hey, it's good to be back. It's good to see some familiar faces. And Jack, stay awake. You got to stay awake. Where are you? But I want you to know it's always nice to come to Kingfisher. I couldn't remember the name of the street to turn down, and it's Fay, right? My dad's name. How would you like to have a name Fay, be a man, serve in the Marine Corps, and be a boxer? My dad always used to say they should have named him Sue. For you older people, you'll get that. So, hey, it's good to be here. I tried to bring Vicki with me. Vicki's my wife, but she had, at church today, they're having their VPS, Vacation Bible School Review Week, and she wanted to be there. I have a son that's 39 years old. He volunteered and worked the whole week at Vacation Bible School, and he said it was the most exhausting thing. If I just speak loud, or do I need a mic? I need a mic. Is that better? Okay. So anyway, I want to go back and say I wanted to bring Vicki, but she had some assignments today at church, and she stayed there. But Vicki and I celebrated our 49th anniversary last week. I know, that's incredible. And for our 50th, I don't have any idea what we're going to do. I told her I'd take her to Wichita or something like that, and she wasn't too thrilled. But let me tell you how I met my wife. And it kind of leads into what I want to share with you today. When I was in college, I was just a young guy going to college, playing college football, and just enjoying life. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't date very much because athletics was a lot more important than girls, and athletics was a lot more important than my grades. And so at school, my freshman year, and I'm sure I'm the only one in here that can relate to this, but I did a couple of knucklehead. No sound? Got a red light. See, I've got something good to say today.
That's the middle one.
Hello? Is that good? Scoot over a little bit. I feel like it's going to hit me right between the eyes. So, as a freshman in college, I don't even recall what it was, but I had to go see the dean of students on our college campus. And listen, when you get to go see the dean of students, it's usually because you're doing well academically or you're doing some great leadership. Well, I did something wrong, and I don't recall what it was, but I went to the dean of students. And when I walked into the dean of students, there was a college girl working at the front desk for the dean of students, and I went, wow, she is pretty. Not only is she pretty, she is good looking. I have got to meet this girl. So I just, I go in and say, hey, I'm John Odell. I'm here to see the dean. I'm sure it's something about my academics or whatever. By the way, what's your name? And she said, I'm not sharing my name with you. And I go, well, how about your phone number? Because, we didn't have cell phones then. She says, you're not getting my phone number either. So the dean calls me in, I go in, the dean basically says, you're not here for academic problems, you're not here for academic success, you're here for doing some knucklehead things on campus, you were caught, here's what's going to take place, you're going to square your life away, or you get one more mistake, and after that mistake, you're out on campus. And so basically, you get 2 strikes, the 3rd strike, you're out. So I walked back out, I stopped at Vicki's desk, and I said, seriously, can I get your name and number? And she said, no. So I walked back out. The dean of students walks out to Vicki and says, whatever you do, don't ever date this guy. So I thought, the only way that I'm going to meet her is I've got to do something bad again so I can go back and see the dean for my second time. So I did something again. The dean calls him back in. He says, listen, I'm not kidding you. This is what's going to happen. You make another mistake, you're going to be expelled from our campus. You're going to be on probation. You're going to blah, 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 blah. All I could think about was, while he was talking to me, was I got to get her name and I got to get her phone number. So when I left, I said, just give me a chance. And so she writes down their dorm number and her name. And so I started pursuing Vicki as just to have a date, just to go and do something, just to get acquainted. And the best decision I ever made. But during that time frame, over the next course of a year, she was also dating another guy, kind of more than me, named Joe. Joe was a good guy, great guy, but he wasn't as great as I was. So on Valentine's Day, I go out to Hallmark, I buy my wife a nice card. I think it costs $1. And I had no money in college. I don't have much money today, but I didn't have anything then. And I got the card and I wrote in it, you know, you're awesome, you're beautiful, I'm so lucky to be able to date you, your #1 admirer in life, John Odell. I thought it was pretty neat. And my best friend walks into the room. He says, hey, he called me P for pal. He was my best friend. He was killed in Baghdad 18 years ago. And his name was Rod Richardson. And Rod came in and said, hey, P, what in the world are you getting Vicki for Valentine's Day? And I said, man, I got this card. I mean, he even had a yellow envelope. It was really nice. And he said, hey, I was just in the flower shop. Joe came in. He bought Vicki a half dozen yellow roses. I go, what? And number one, I'm thinking, where does he have that money? And so he said, you're beat. You're #2. So he left. Rod left the room, and I was sitting there, and I said, man, I got an idea. So I went back, and I said, hey, Rodriguez, take me to the flower shop. So he drives me to the flower shop. I walk in. I have my card in my hand. It says to Vicki Rhodes, Pasagi Hall, room number, whatever her room number was. And I said, ma'am, I have just ordered a half dozen yellow roses for Vicki. And I was wondering, could you please attach my card to my flowers, because this card would mean so much than your little card. This lady said, that is the sweetest thing I have ever heard. And I said, and by the way, can I have that card? And she gave me their card. I attached my card to the yellow roses that I didn't buy. They delivered them that afternoon. I got a call from Vicki, and she said, you're #1. That's how I started securing my relationship with my wife. And after a year of dating, we got married, and we have celebrated 49 years of marriage on a half dozen stolen yellow roses. True story. You know, when we got married, we had no idea that 49 years would ever even happen. Because when you're at a young life, you don't see an older life. You don't see the journey that life will take you on. You know, our dreams are, we live in a rented apartment for $125 a month, bills paid. Are you kidding me? You could afford gasoline, you could afford groceries, you could do, I was still in school, Vicki graduated, she was teaching school, and we were just, you know, having the time of our life as young marrieds, not having any idea what was coming our way. But as life goes on, whether in our early marriage, mid-marriage, and even now later in life, storms come our way. Storms come our way. And I want to talk to you today about storms. Storms, they will come in life. The question is not if, but when. This past week, once again in Oklahoma, what did we experience? We experienced storms. I have a friend in California that calls me all the time. He goes, man, I don't know how you live out there. There's a tornado every day. And I go, we don't even recognize tornadoes unless they're kind of close to us. But the word storm refers to various kinds of weather disturbances. No matter where you live, you have experienced significant storms. I'm talking about winter storms, thunderstorms, tornadic storms, firestorms, snowstorms, hailstorms, ice storms, high wind storms, dust storms, and the Oklahoma City thunder. Okay, I just kind of threw that in. Storms can be brief and they can be long, and we experience all of these storms in Oklahoma. They can be dangerous and damaging, and we have seen a bunch this spring. The Bible shares stories of storms when crossing the Sea of Galilee. At least 4 of the disciples were very experienced fishermen, and they were aware of the tendencies of sudden raging storms on the Sea of Galilee. In Mark 4:35 through 41, let's see if I can find this. I wanted to read this to you real quick. And he says, on that day when evening had come, he told them, let's cross over to the other side of the lake. So they left the crowd, and he took them along, since he was already in the boat, and other boats were with him. A fierce wind storm arose, and the waves were breaking over the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the storm, sleeping on the cushion. They woke him up and said to him, Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, Silence, be still. The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then he said to them, Why are you fearful? Do you still have no faith? And they were terrified, and they asked each other, Even the wind and the sea obeys him. Jesus was asleep in the boat. Vicki and I had the opportunity to go to Israel 2022. And we had the opportunity to go on the Sea of Galilee. And some of you may have had that experience. The Sea of Galilee is like a big lake. But terrific storms take place. Many boats have been sank, many boats have been swamped, and many lives have been lost due to the instant the winds come down out of those mountains and hit that sea. And I love how they said they woke Jesus up in the midst of the storm. And he says, Do you care if we drown? Jesus was exhausted. He was just like any man in this room, except he was perfect. He was tired, and he was asleep in the midst of the storm. And they woke him up. Water had to have been splashing on him. They woke him up. And with his strength, he said, Be still and be quiet. In Mark 6:45 and 41, it says, Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him on the sea to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he said goodbye to them, he went away to a mountain to pray. And when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on land. He saw them battered as they rowed, because the wind was against them. In other words, there was another storm. Around 3 a.m, he came toward them, walking on the sea, and wanted to pass by them. When they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost, and they cried out. For they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke with them and said, Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. Then he got into the boat with them. The wind ceased. They were completely astounded because they had not understood about the loaves. Instead, their hearts were hardened. So Jesus not only can calm the stream, but he can walk on the water. Jesus saw that the disciples were struggling in the boat because of a storm. He decided to walk on the waters towards them, and as he approached, they became frightened. Once again, he quieted the storm, and in verse 40, he said, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Like most of us, they became very, very forgetful when the storm swept into their lives. This was a storm which awakens their fears, and it overwhelms their faith. They did go to Jesus for help. Their test of faith in the midst of life's storms was recorded to encourage us to trust the Lord, not if, but when we go through our storms in life. This should teach us life lessons in our stormy situations. And I pulled out 3 quick points. Number 1, the Lord is always with you in your life storms. He is always with you. Number 2, the Lord is always in control of your life storms. And number 3, the Lord's love never cracks under pressure from your life storms. These lessons must be applied when storms pop up in your life, such as personal storms, marriage storms, parental storms, grandparent storms, work storms, health storms, financial storms, and many other storms that you will face. And many of you today are probably in a storm in your life. I don't know what that storm is, but I bet you I just said it in one of those past words. In Matthew 7:24 and 27, Jesus talks about the wise man who built his home on the rock and the foolish man that built his rock on the shifting sand, or built his home on the shifting sand. And then he gives the example, when storms came in their lives, the one who survived that storm was the one who built it on the solid rock. And my question to you would be, who are you building your foundation on? Because storms will come in your life. In 2022, which was 3 years ago, I retired from a ministry called FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I had worked with them for 45 years. Vicki and I, this was our whole life, just about, was working in a ministry of FCA. I wasn't ready to retire, but it was time to retire. It was time to move on. I still felt like I had value. I still felt like I had things to give. I still felt like I needed to be involved into a ministry. And so as I kind of went through that storm in life of getting out of a job that I had worked so long, knowing that I still had something to give, I wanted to continue to do something in a ministry. I had a great friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, you need to keep doing ministry." And I said, I've been praying about it and thinking about it. And what I would like to do is start a ministry to retired coaches. I mean, I'm 71 now. At that time, I was 68. And I thought, I come across retired people today that just, they seem to lose their value. They seem to lose their fellowship. They seem to just feel like that they don't have much value to give anymore. And these people have so much wisdom from so much experience and have so much to give, so much to mentor. And so I started a ministry to retired coaches. I called it 17 Ministries. And the reason I call it 17 Ministries is because when my son walked through the door his junior year in high school, and he yells out at the house, "Hey, Dad, I got my number today." And I go, "What number did you get?" Hoping it was my number, number 12. He said, "I got number 17. And I said to myself, who the heck wants 17? What's wrong with my number? And I said, "Bo, why did you pick number 17? And he goes, "Dad, that was my grandfather's number. Grandpa Coach's number was 17. And I want his number because of the influence he has had in my life." I got in the car. I drove straight to my dad's home. And I told my dad that story. Now, my dad is a retired Light Colonel in the Marine Corps. He was a Hall of Fame coach in Oklahoma. He was a national Golden Gloves boxing champion. He was a successful speaker that spoke on God and country all throughout the country. He spoke for Vince Lombardi. He spoke for Bear Bryant. He spoke for President Reagan. But he also did the football banquet at Kingfisher High School. He also spoke at Bowleg's graduation. It didn't matter who asked, he went. But when he came to the point of his life, and my mom had passed away, and his friends no longer had fellowship with him, nobody called him and saying, hey, we need you, he started losing value in his life. So from that story, and when I shared that story about my son wanting his number, it gave him encouragement, it gave him value, and it kind of gave him a time to live. And so when my dad passed away and I got out of FCA, I thought of that story, and that's why we call it 17 Ministries. Because I want to continue to invest and to give my life of encouragement to a group of men and women that need value in their life. And now not only do we have retired coaches, but we have many retired businessmen and women who come and be a part of some of the things that we do. And we have started groups in Norman and Edmond and Tulsa, Ardmore, Ada, and some other locations. But it's been a lot of fun. But as they've gone through storms in their lives, they're able to share those storms with one another, and because of the fellowship that they have and the food that we feed them at these luncheons, they're encouraged to continue to live and to share their vast experience with younger people who have an ear to listen. So that was in 2022. I get out of FCA, I start a new ministry, and in 2023, I do a health checkup, and bingo, a storm hits my life. I was shared with our doctor, you got cancer. I go, what? I mean, I'm in decent shape. I'm not in great shape. I eat correctly. The worst thing I drink is soft drinks. He said, I don't care. He says, you got cancer, and we need to put a game plan together. So we put a game plan together. In 2023, the game plan was to do proton radiation for 28 days. Now, I had to go through months of preparation before we got there, and some of you in this room have had cancer, and you know what the battle is, and you know how to fight it, and you know how to not give up. And I remember the anxiety that would creep into my life, thinking, gosh dang it, I've just gone through a busy part of my life. I'm looking forward to enjoying the tail end of my life. I want to finish strong, and now I got to fight cancer. And I remember praying to God, God, help me get through this storm. And literally, the next morning after I prayed that prayer, the next morning in my quiet time, God gave me this message. Don't focus on you. Don't focus on your storm. Focus on others. I mean, it was such a clear, it wasn't audible, but it was such a clear message that my cancer was not about me, but it was going to be about others. Because where I'm getting ready to go and get treatment, there are others that are a lot worse off than I am. There are spouses who are struggling, helping their spouse. The nurses and the doctors who give so much, they're exhausted daily. The ladies at the front desk who greet you like your family, they're tired. And so God said, make it about everybody else. So I remember going in my first treatment that day, and I thought, okay, here we go. So I walk in, I'm saying, all right, God, give me the opportunity. I don't know what the opportunity is, but just give it to me. Let me know. Nothing took place. They call my name, John Odell, are you here? Yep, I'm right here. Please come back. Laid me on the deck, they were getting ready to lay me on the table, and I went, hey, before you guys lay me on the table and you zap me with this proton red beam, I didn't know what it was going to be like. I remember asking them on the third day, I go, are you guys really doing something? I said, I don't hear anything. I don't smell anything. I don't see anything. You know, I was expecting this big red beam to come in and blow my legs up. But that first day I walked in, and there were 5 female nurses and 1 male nurse that greeted me. And I'm just telling you, I'm glad them girls were in charge, because that guy, he didn't have a clue. No, I'm kidding. But those girls were so compassionate. One was pregnant. One was getting ready to get married. One had just gotten married. And the male nurse, he was one of the coolest dudes ever. And as I walked back there and I introduced myself to all the nurses, I said, hey, I'm supposed to pray for you today before I start my journey. And they all went, what? I go, no, I'm supposed to pray for you today, because this cancer that I have is not about me, it's about you. Would you all mind just kind of holding hands, and we kind of do a little circle, and let me just pray for you for just a second. And my prayer was a simple prayer of simply, God, would you give them strength, energy, wisdom, and would you give them encouragement? Because they are servants beyond serving. These are the greatest, and I've never even met them. I've said, these are the greatest people I've ever met in my life. Now let's attack this cancer. And I said, amen. So every Monday for 6 weeks, when I came into the room, I said, all right, we're praying again. And on the 6th week, the last time that I met with them and prayed, they all said, Mr. Odell, you've encouraged us in our walk. You've allowed us to feel like we're doing something positive. And we want to know more about Jesus. And so just in that simple act of praying for someone else, making my storm not about me, but about others, allowed me the opportunity to minister to people when there was an opportunity to minister. And during that time, I met spouses out in the waiting room that was waiting on their husband or waiting on their wife that I was able to introduce myself to. I met a man from Perry, Oklahoma. I walked up and I said, hey, my name's John Odell. I just noticed you over here by yourself. I just wondered if there's anything, you want some water? Is there anything I can do for you? And he said, man, you could just pray for me right now. And I didn't even offer that. And I said, man, I'd be glad to. What's your name and where are you from? And he told me his name, and he says, I'm from Perry. And I go, Perry? I said, my dad used to live in Perry. He goes, well, what was your dad's name? He said, Faye. I said, Faye Odell. He goes, Faye, he was one of my best friends. He goes, we had coffee on Monday morning or Saturday mornings. We went to church together on Sunday. And he goes, how's your dad? When he moved, we just lost contact. And I said, well, my father passed away. And man, he started crying. And he said, your dad was such an encouragement to me. I'm so glad I get to meet his son. Would you pray for me? Every day is an opportunity for you to help someone in a storm that they are facing in life. And when you're going through a storm, which you are or you will, Christ is the answer to your storm. Just like those disciples in that boat, in the midst of one of the most powerful storms, swamping a boat, or where they couldn't row because the storm was too difficult, Jesus either walked to them, calmed the storm, got in the boat, and became their strength, or he woke up, calmed the storm, and encouraged their faith. Jesus Christ can do the same to you today if you will allow him to be the master of your storm. I don't know what storm you're in right now, or I don't know what storm is coming your way, but there's one coming. Even after you've gone through that storm, there's another storm that's coming. And who do you lean on to get you through that storm? My encouragement to you today is to continue to grow in your faith, to be confident in Christ, and allow him to manage your storm. And don't make your storm about you. Make your storm about others, because in the midst of your storm, you can be an encouragement. You can be a reflection of Christ into the lives that you touch. You know, I don't have much more to say today. John told me I better be out here at 11 or I'm going to be in trouble. So I've honored my time, but I want to ask you a question today. Is Christ the most important thing in your life today? I don't know. Only you can answer that. In 1975, there was a coach that pointed right at my life, and he asked me, as I was sitting in an audience of about 1,000 people, he asked me the question. He didn't ask anybody else in that audience. It was only me. And he literally pointed his finger right at me, and he said, "What's the most important thing in your life?" And I remember, is he talking to me? I hope I don't have to stand up and give an answer. But I remember answering this question. I'm the most important thing in my life. And then he shared a message that if it's not Jesus Christ, then the most important thing in your life has no value. And I remember that night, I committed my life to Christ. I didn't know how to commit my life to Christ. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know if I was supposed to follow in baptism like we heard this morning, get an understanding of baptism. I didn't know what. I just remember when I walked out the door of that assembly and everybody was going that way, I went that way by myself. And in a parking lot behind a car, in a gravel parking lot, I got down on my knees. And I remember saying, "God, I don't even know what the heck I'm doing, but I want you to become the most important thing in my life." And my life changed drastically in 1975 because he became the most important thing in my life, not me. And so as Vicki and I, or Vicki, or I, or we have gone through life, we've experienced a lot of storms. We've had financial problems. We've had family members pass away. We've had children problems. We've had grandkid problems. We've had a constant wave of storms throughout our life. And the only thing that conquered those storms or got us through those storms was Jesus Christ. If Christ is not the most important thing in your life, today I'm asking you to make that decision to where Jesus Christ should be, can be, and will be the most important thing in your life. And if you'd like to make that commitment today, man, I'll just be right down here. And I'll sit right over there and I'll wait. And I'd be more than happy to share with you the life-changing story of Christ.